I want to start off by saying that I wasn't around for the beginning of Melee's competitive scene. Believe it or not, this game is actually older than I am by a couple years. Even though this game is ancient by the means of the usual lifespan of a game, I still watch videos on it almost every day, and so do millions of other people. Now, besides the fact that this game has such a big fan base, Nintendo has tried to shut down the competitive scene many times, and they're currently trying to do it again. But just like the past, they won't. You know why? Because this is Melee.
Armada has no shield. Armada has weapon! Absolutely tearing through everyone today, Tope. Joe, did he just walk up slowly and down smash?
He did. He did the same thing. Yeah, absolutely. Wow. And I was wondering, had a question mark.
Melee is an old game, but just because it's old doesn't mean it's necessarily bad. Melee is widely considered to be a beautiful accident. The game is full of stuff that is either really buggy or complicated, and it had a lot of stuff that we're not even sure if it's meant to be in the game. Melee is the only game in the franchise that really has that nuance, that complexity, and it's one of the big reasons why it's still alive. Brawl, Smash 4, and now Ultimate have changed the formula slightly, from removing directional area dodging, to adding tripping and a rage mechanic, to just adjusting the overall pace of the game. Over the years, the games have definitely gotten a lot more polished and easy to play, but something about Melee is amazing. It's that fact that it is unpolished, it is jank, and it is immensely complex because of it. That's what we love about it. Seeing people master this tech that in some cases requires near frame-perfect inputs is mesmerizing, and it will really get you hype if you know how difficult it really is. Without the limits that the later games have, Melee players can get incredibly creative with their play. People are still inventing new tech 19 years later. All of these things is what makes people love this game more than anything on Earth. Speaking of people loving this game, I really hope you love this video. And if you do, subscribe. Did you know that only 40%? I'm kidding. Maybe. But seriously, speaking of people loving this game, let's talk about those people. The Melee community is special. Some people might see it as nice and fun, some people might find it incredibly toxic. Neither viewpoint I would say is completely false, but neither are completely right. The Melee community can be toxic, especially if you look at the older days. People like Leffen and HBox have been considered to be the quote-unquote villains of the Smash scene in prior years. But as of now, things have really changed. Obviously, there's still a wide variety of personalities. Mango will always be the type of guy to speak his mind and just play from the heart. Mewtwo King will always have the brain of a computer. And even the previously mentioned Leffen and Hungrybox have now become very inspirational and admirable people in some people's eyes, including myself. Those are the two that, at this moment, I idolize the most, and considering how many people hated them 10-ish years ago, it's really inspiring to see how you can turn your image around and become something that people look up to. What I'm getting at here is that Melee's community is diverse. There's so many people to meet, so many faces to see, but they all have one thing in common. This 19-year-old game that was rushed and is incredibly buggy holds a special place in their hearts. Some people play it just for fun, and some people devote their whole heart and soul into perfecting this game. Keep in mind this game came out in 2001. What happens with most esports titles is that when a new game in the franchise comes out, the community moves on to that and starts to hold tournaments. But for Smash, something interesting happened. When Brawl came out, many people were hesitant to make the step forward. Brawl was such a change of pace that so many people felt like it was actually a step backwards. So some moved on, some simply didn't. Brawl's release was the first time I think we really saw the Melee community's lifelong bond to this game. People deciding to still run tournaments for the old game while the new one had just been released doesn't really happen often. Now personally, I started playing during the Brawl era. Brawl was the game I owned on the Wii, it was the first introduction to Smash. But one time I went over to a friend's house and he had Melee. I was just a kid, so I didn't really understand much, yet I could still tell there was a difference there. And I think overall, I have played Melee for hundreds more hours than I have played Brawl. Now, as I've grown up, I've realized just how different the Smash games are. While it's the same concept with the same goals and same style of play, it's like comparing, I don't know, skateboarding to snowboarding. Yeah, essentially they're the same thing, but just because you're good at one doesn't mean you're good at the other. I think that's another thing keeping Melee alive. Many of Melee's players just understand Melee. Melee out of all the Smash games feels the most unique. Its fast and snappy gameplay partnered with the lack of things like a buffer system really makes something that's pretty hard to pick up, but incredibly fun to master. I know I'm just repeating myself here, but at the end of the day, what keeps us coming back to Melee is just how different it is from newer titles. At first it can feel bad and unpolished, but when you get used to it, it can feel like the most responsive Smash game to date. Melee has a little bit of this learning curve if you ask me. It's really tough to start, but once you get into it, you fly through it. Especially coming back from some of the newer games, it can take quite a while for Melee to click, but once it does, and you start to understand how the game works, you'll be a lot better off. So, if you're bad at Melee, and you think it feels bad, just maybe try and get a little better at it. I don't mean that in a mean way, but seriously, Melee is not a game you're gonna pick up and immediately get the hang of. It takes a while if you're used to the newer games. The last thing I want to mention is that the Melee community has some of the most dedication out of any competitive gaming scene I've seen up to this point. Melee has tournaments, obviously. Melee has custom controllers you can buy just for Melee. Melee has international players. Melee now has 2 documentaries to try and show the legacy of this game and its players. And it has thousands of creators that spend hours and hours talking about this near 20-year-old game. You don't find this type of dedication on other games, especially ones this old. I know I'm not exactly the right person to tell you about the history of Melee, which is why I encourage you to do your own research. Go watch the original Five Gods' story. Go learn about how the Melee community prevailed through almost 20 years of hardships, disapproval, and hate from other gaming communities. Hey, little post-script read recording here. Some things I've said in this video, I know, I completely understand. There is a lot more to it than what I've said. Like I just made the point about Melee suffering through 20 years of disapproval and hate. Yes, that's true, but on the flip side, there's been golden ages of Melee. There's been ages of Melee where it was at the top of the food chain, like the king of the hill. Most of the points I make in this have a long list of things that go along with them, and if you want to explain those things or give a little more context in the comments, feel very free to do so. But all that I ask is that instead of writing a hateful comment and a very aggressive one, if you're writing your comment with the intent to inform people about all the stuff that I missed, please at least be nice and informative so people can enjoy reading your comment instead of just feeling like they're getting yelled at. Alright, if you made it this far, thank you. Not many people make it to the end of my videos, so consider yourself one of the special few. I would greatly appreciate it if you could hit that sub button as we're closing in on 100 subs. It's a small number, but it's the first of many milestones I'd be happy to hit. I'm live on Twitch often, and I'm always in Discord if you wanted to hang out, both of which are linked in the description. Again, I really appreciate you making it this far, and if you did, comment something about bananas to confuse everyone. Have a good one. I'll see you soon.